Okay. So radio waves you would be familiar with because they are used to send signals from radio stations to radios, and radios pick up the signals, and then they are then converted into sound, okay, using radio. Okay, we're going to look a little bit more detail about how radios work later. Radio waves were first produced and detected by Heinrich Hertz, so the frequency guy Hertz, in 1887. He produces radio waves by causing sparks to jump across an air gap between two electrodes. Okay, so basically what you can do is if you have an old style radio, so not one of the digital ones, if you make sparks, the old style radio will pick them up. Okay, the very basic radio messages could just be sort of like Morse code, but using sparks. Okay. And what I have at the front is an old style radio. So if I turn it on, today's version of my voice is about playing words. Some random station. Okay, I'll turn it off for a second. What I've also got is a battery. And what I do is I connect one side of the battery to one side of this. It's just a metal tile. And then I will basically scrape the other side of the battery, the other wire along it to create two sparks. Okay, just very little sparks. And hopefully, if I turn this on, you should be able to hear the sparks interfering with the radio. So let's turn it on. Okay. That's it picking up the sparks. Okay, so it's just so it's what it is. It's just little producing electrons. Okay, those electrons in the sparks, and it's picking up on those little electrons. And you can transmit the electrons in different ways to produce different signals. Okay, they're very basic ones. They don't use music or any signals like as complicated music, but they can do Morse code and things like that. What also is quite interesting is certain lights you can turn on and off, and they also cause interference because they're also producing electrons or little particles that interfere. So I think a lot of parents may maybe felt different about listening to different things they're doing. I used to get a lot of interference when ADT very high. I'm like, what are you doing? Very interesting radio station. So that's what radio waves basically are. Okay, that's in their very basic form. So that's what the experiment that I just did was that one there. So contactors move backwards and forwards across rough metal contact, producing small sparks. The radio receiver is tuned into a few different frequencies and the signal listened to, and you can hear it there. So observations, we can just write down, we could hear the interference on the radio. Okay. And it's the same, you can tune it to different frequencies as well. So let's tune it on the parity on. Not really much to feel for that. Even if you have it on no radio station, so, I mean, if you wanted to, transmit a secret message, that's how you do it. So the signal from a transmitting station causes electrical charges, so electrons, in the transmitting aerial to move or oscillate. The movement of the charges makes invisible radio waves, which spread out from the aerial. A radio set has an aerial which picks up these waves. And when the waves reach the radio aerial, electric charges in the aerial start to move and make a tiny electric current in the radio circuit. And then that goes on to be translated into whatever you're listening to on the radio. So, for example, some Harry Potter chat. Okay, so how can you transmit more signals with radio transmission? So radio waves have frequencies above the range of human hearing. If I didn't have that radio on and you can't hear those electrical sparks really. You could hear the noises that they produce, but the sparks themselves you can't hear. Okay, so the simplest way to transmit information using radio waves is to switch the transmitter on and off in some coded way, such as Morse code. So on, off, big on. Okay, so dot, dash. Yeah. So information in the form of an audio signal can also be carried on the radio wave by either varying the amplitude or the frequency of the radio carrier wave. And this is known as amplitude modulation, AM, or frequency modulation, FM. So that's where AM and FM come from. And it all depends on what is being changed to help transmit those signals. So an amplitude modulated signal is, we're going to draw one. So what we're going to draw is we're going to draw constant frequency. So the width of the wave shouldn't change, but the height of the wave will. So this is a tricky part. So you want them all to be sort of the same width, but they can be different heights. That's more or less the same. So in the above case, the amplitude of the signal is changed and the frequency of the carrier is constant. I'm sure you can make it look a little bit better. So the width of the waves shouldn't change, but the height should. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nowadays it's more digital, so it's just sort of ones and zeros being transmitted. But back in the day when you had FM and AM radio stations, that's how signals were encoded and transmitted, by changing the amplitude or changing the frequency. And you could probably guess that a frequency modulated signal has the height doesn't change, but the width changes. So what I'll do is I'll just make this a bit smaller and leave it up. So this one's a little bit easier. So you want the height to be more or less the same, but you can change the width. So in this case, the amplitude of the signal is constant, but the frequency changes. Mine are a little bit dodgy. They should all be the same height. Okay, so you guys are going to be building a radio shortly. Hopefully the equipment will work. So, first of all, sorry, we're still writing. So, we're going to create a radio. Now, most of the circuit board is done for you, so you won't need to do too much, but there is a little bit of a setup involved. But before we build them, I want to label this block diagram of a radio receiver. So basically, a block diagram shows you what's connected to what. Okay, so you have a tuner, which is the sort of thing that receives the signal after it's coming through the aerial. You also have a power supply, which is the thing that obviously provides power to the radio. And you have the aerial, which actually receives the signal and then sends it to the tuner. Then, when this tuner gets the signal from the aerial, it decodes it then it amplifies it, then it sends it to a loudspeaker, and then we can hear it. Okay? So all those like sort of modulations, those amplitude modulations or frequency modulations, they get received by the aerial, sends it to a tuner, which also has to have a power supply attached to it. It then gets decoded, so basically translated into what you're going to hear. Then it gets amplified, so you can actually hear it. Then it gets sent out of a loudspeaker and towards your ears. Okay. So yeah. It's a thing that before it can get translated, it sort of like collects it, I suppose. Yeah. Okay. Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a radio. There it is. Okay. So you will see. You all have a grey. Don't touch it just yet. But you all have a grey tray to the side of your desks, and you should have all of the pieces of equipment that you need. Now, if any of these pieces of equipment don't work, there are spares at the side that you can change them out. So hopefully you'll get it to work. So I took a photo of it yesterday when I was playing around with it, and I got mine to work. So what you need is you've got a 6-volt battery, which is this part here, and that gets plugged in from one side of the battery to this bottom with a negative, and the other side of the battery to the positive. Okay, so that obviously is the power supply to it. You also need to add in you should have a little wire in your tray. That goes from the sort of squiggly thing here, solenoid, across to the top of the triangle there. Okay, so those two have to be connected in. And the other thing that you need to plug in is your loudspeaker. So your loudspeaker, they get plugged in either side of you can see there's a loudspeaker diagram there, and that gets plugged in either side of there. Now the loudspeaker is probably the one thing that might not work, so you might need to come and swap them out. So you see when I plug mine in, it's very quiet. If I say hear that, so and try and tune it in. Well, I'm sure you guys might be able to find this radio station. You might need to listen to it a bit closely. Now, the various parts of this device to be able to find the radio station are this is your volume, this one here. This is your tune it into a station. And this sometimes if you push this part, that's like the aerial. So if you push it back and forth, it might help you get a station. Okay. So challenge is to find a radio station and listen to some music or something. Okay, inside the desk.